today is an extra special day because I have the one and only Jim Parker from the Boss Group out of Florida. And I'm excited about interviewing Jim for a number of reasons. Jim is, to say he's an industry veteran is just the tip of it. He's been at it for over 25 years. And I have personally learned a lot from Jim. Jim is a national speaker. He's come and presented at the BBA. He's led panels for other brokers at the IBBA. He served many of the local associations in our industry as a whole. He has a unique thing about giving back to his competitors, if you want to call them that, to other business brokers. And it's a rising tide lifts all boats mentality that Jim has. And I love that about him. And so with that, I'd like to introduce to the Raleigh Business Broker Show, Jim Parker. Welcome, Jim. How are you today?
Thank you, Neal. I appreciate it. You are too kind. I'm really excited to be on, Neal. You know I have a ton of respect for you. You're an awesome broker and a good friend.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. The feeling is mutual. And with our time today, I want to go through a few different topics about serving business owners, about the industry in general, maybe some of the dark side. I like how you've gone there in some of your content. If you haven't checked out Jim Parker, Business Broker on YouTube, you've got a lot of really good content. And I like how you go there. And then just how the industry's changed over the years. Those are some of the topics that I want to touch on today. But I want to just start with you. Give us a 2-3 minute introduction of how you became a business broker.
I own my own photography, wedding photography and video business back in the day. This is the 90s that we started that. We grew it to a pretty big operation. We had 35 employees. We had an office in Orlando, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, and Hawaii. I think we were doing like 2.2 or 2.5 million in gross sales, which is a good number now, but that was even more back in the 90s. But 80% of our clients were Japanese. When September 11th happened, the next day on September 12th, the Prime Minister of Japan came out and said, do not fly to the United States. So our business kind of evaporated overnight. I had a friend that was a real estate agent at the time. He was talking me into becoming a real estate agent. What I went to college for, I no longer had interest in. And I had a stay-at-home wife at the time. I had a young baby and a baby on the way. And I'm looking around and going, what am I going to do? I like the idea of being in an industry where you get paid however hard you work. And so I looked at the residential real estate field, Neal. I did not want to sell houses. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just don't get excited about homes. Walking in, look at the beautiful foyer and da-da-da-da-da-da. It just wasn't me. But in real estate school, because down here in Florida, you have to have a real estate license in order to sell businesses. In the 63-hour course, we talked about business brokerage for about 23 seconds, and I was sold. So that's kind of how I fell into the industry.
I love that story because I've met at least one of your kids, and I've seen pictures of the other one, and definitely not a baby anymore. And he's all grown up. So that shows how long you've been at it. And two, similar here, not a lot of content in the real estate stuff about selling businesses in North Carolina. And number three, when I picked this field, I remember thinking, I just sold a tropical fish store after being a shark diver. Like, I don't do regular things. And business brokerage is just quirky enough to kind of fit. So I think we had a similar path there. And a lot of business brokers come from doing other entrepreneurship type things, don't they?
They do. And I can totally understand. I think you have to have a small business entrepreneur mentality. I think it gives you a big edge in our industry because every day you wake up and you're thinking about what you need to do. You don't have anybody telling you what you need to do for the day. And you're not working on a salary. Usually you're getting up and, whatever you earn is what you earn, and you're making your own schedule, and you got to keep your priorities straight. And I think it takes a big entrepreneur personality to do that. And obviously with that, you also got to understand business financials and how things were set up. And that was one of the biggest things too. When I started selling businesses early in my career, I did not realize how much I knew about small business until I started working with buyers that were looking to buy businesses and realizing, wow, I did gain a lot of knowledge about just small stuff I didn't even think about that was very impactful for somebody that had never been around that world before.
Funny you say that, because I think about my first few deals, and I got my MBA between selling my business and becoming a business broker. And I was not strong in accounting. I remember when I did my MBA classes, I kind of leaned on some of my partners for the accounting piece. And I didn't understand accounting when I had my first business. But I remember very specifically talking to a transmission mechanic and trying to educate him on how just because he was taking money out of the business to pay off his loans, that wasn't cash flow. He's like, the next person won't have to pay the debts that I'm servicing. And I'm like, doesn't really count towards cash flow. And it was that idea of you really learn this business by learning it through other people's books, like understanding how that works and translating it to them. MBA didn't teach me that. It was going through all the classes at IBBA and then translating them to somebody that just was a blue collar background. That's how I really started to understand that stuff in earnest.
Yeah, and I think my skills have sharpened over the years too by just looking at so many different financials from so many different businesses. You just pick up a lot of different things that kind of interplay with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And just this bigger topic of serving the industry, one of my favorite things about this business is we represent owners, and then they have professional advisors, and then we get it. I mentioned an MBA. We get an MBA through our clients' advisors because we're learning from what they're paying their advisors to teach them. I don't know a lot about the professions where you get to soak up an extra MBA on someone else's dime.
Absolutely. And I tell people this all the time. As a business broker, you're walking into businesses and the business owner is telling you things that they're not sometimes even telling their CPA or their attorney, and they're not telling anybody else. And you learn so much. And like, if you're thinking about someday owning your own business, I don't think there's a better training ground than being a business broker yourself, because you're exposed to so many different things. You're hearing from the seller what's working, what's not working, not from reading it, not from textbooks or anything like that, but just real world, what's going on in the real world and what business owners themselves are seeing works and doesn't work and how they're operating and how they're doing things. It's really interesting.
This topic of how we learn as business brokers, it brings me one of my first things I really want to dig in with you specifically, and that is serving the industry, which is something that you epitomize, Jim. I don't know if you realize how much other business brokers look up to you, but you are somebody who produces content and tells all of your secrets, everything that you learn, you're putting out there on the web for other business brokers. You're actively educating other business brokers, and you're serving on boards and local BBAs to educate other business brokers. So you obviously have an abundance mentality, and some people have this scarcity mentality. Like, I know this and I don't want to give it away. So can you share a little bit about your philosophy? Why do you share so much? Why are you such an open book about everything that you know?
I appreciate that, Neal. I feel like you're the same way, so I'd love to hear your answer too. It started out when I first got in this industry, unfortunately, when I lost my first business and I started getting into doing business brokerage, it took a toll on my family as well. And so it ended up being that I became a single full-time dad, and I was raising my kids. I became a single full-time dad when my kids were 2 and 3. And I had a lot of people. I was new in the industry. I'd only been in the industry for not that long, maybe 2 years at that point. And there were so many different people that I would call and pick. They would let me pick their brain and they would help me. And I was like, God, it's so great about this industry. So many people are willing to help. And then the Business Brokers of Florida Association, I felt like I took so much from that association. So as my kids got older and they were at the point that they could watch themselves and I could put myself more time into my career, I almost felt like at that point that I felt guilty, Neal, because I felt for all those years, it was like I took. So I wanted to give back. And that's how it started, is I wanted to give back to the industry. Mm-hmm. And I do think that I feel like I get better. And I think I put a lot of stuff out there, but I also take a lot of stuff from other people. I'm very thankful because I'm able to talk with business brokers from all over the country and some of the best business brokers around the country, and they share with you what makes them successful. Why did they hit the level that they hit?
Yeah.
And I want to share that information with them. And then for someone who's just new getting into the industry, I just think that's what's great about our industry is that there's so many people willing to share that information. And at the end of the day, Neal, I don't feel like there is enough of us out there to handle the amount of businesses that need to be sold. I just don't think there's enough of us out there. And also, I think as well, for many years, I did things the way I was taught how to do them. And I think a lot of the things that we're taught as business brokers on a very basic level is not the right stuff that should be taught to business brokers. And I think there's just better ways of doing things.
And it's evolving, maybe the way that it was when we were 25 years. I can't stress how old you are, Jim. I kid because you're my friend. But
I'm only 32.
The way it was done back when they learned to slice bread, when you learned how to do business brokerage, again, I joke, but things evolve over time. You read some of Tom West's books, and this is how you do your ad in the yellow pages and in the newspaper. And this is how walk-ins work. This is who mans the floor at the office. And we live in a virtual world now. Everything's online and advertising's different. So I think that's part of it. But to your point, people evolve too. And I know you've been a leader of the Business Brokers of Florida and with the IBBA. I do love this notion of rubbing shoulders with the greats in the industry. That's one reason I serve on these boards. And there's an interesting thing that happens when you get out of your market and you go to a convention and you're networking with other business brokers that you're not directly competing with. They don't feel, even though there's, to your point, it's an unserved market locally and there's not enough business brokers in most markets to sell all the businesses. When you get away from your market, now it's even less intimidation of spilling secrets, if you will, of sharing. You want to really help everyone.
Neal, I'm 1,000% on with that mindset. I feel like my practice really started to take it to the next level when I started getting involved with the International Business Brokers Association. The only problem I have with the IBBA is that I did not join it 15 years, 20 years earlier, or maybe 15 years earlier, because I did start I feel like that's when my practice really started to take off, because you are sitting around with very experienced people from all over the world, and you're taking these classes and these workshops and all the different educational pieces that they offer, not to mention just sitting around a bar at a conference and having a couple beers and chit-chatting with somebody and exchanging ideas and concepts and things like that. It really opens up the way you think about things vastly. IBBA was a game changer for me.
I think we're going to be a broken record on IBBA because I feel the same. I've gotten so much from it, and the more I give to it, the more I get out of it. And not to mention, I'm on some committees. The term board meeting, sometimes I'm on some boards where this is a really boring meeting, but I'm on, not with the IBBA, but with some of the meetings and the committees I'm in with IBBA, it's like they start on time, they end on time. Everybody's excited to be there. It's a very well-run organization, and the result is there's a lot of value coming out of it for the members. So I won't make this a commercial for the IBBA, but I think we're both big fans. And a lot of the people that watch this channel and your channel are people with putting their toe in the water into business brokerage. And I think I speak for both of us when I say, if you're not already getting involved with the IBBA, you got to start there. I mean, they're going to have most everything that you need at an international level for training and networking.
Absolutely. And, it's not, you go to the conferences and not just go to the workshops and go to the classes, but make sure you talk to people during lunch and during dinner and during the different events that they have, and hang out at the bar. And it's the networking that's just as valuable.
At the most recent IBBA conference, at the opening ceremony, I met a new business broker, and he said, "Neal, I hope you'll talk to me. Like, I'm brand new. And, I've got, the more you go, the more of these little flags they give you. And I've got a few of them just because I've been doing it for a little while." And he says, his is like new member, IBBA. He's like, "Do you mind sharing just a little bit of time with me?" And I'm like, "Of course, man. Welcome. I'm glad you're here." And he's like, "I'm like 2 months in. I got 12 listings. I just don't know how to sell them." And I'm like, "What? How did you get 12 listings?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a great marketer. I'm trying to learn how to sell what I got." And I'm like, "Dude, you have the opposite problem of what most people have. Most people can't find the listings to sell." So it's a good example of, number one, I was super impressed that he asked me for help, because a lot of people would just not know, not really ask. And number two, he had something that I wanted. I was like, let's meet up after this conference. I want to learn from you about your marketing skills, your valuation, your questions about how to sell them. I can help you with that. So those are the type of moments that you're talking about, just spontaneous meeting people at these conferences where you're going to make a friend and learn something from them. IBBA is great. We talked about that. Local BBAs are great. I want to pivot a little bit and get into bad actors in the industry. And I'm interested in your perspective because you've been at it for so long. In the real estate world forever, buy a home, no money down, get rich quick type of stuff. This stuff has been around forever. But we talked about how marketing's changing, the internet's changing everything. I'm seeing more of this type of stuff now, specific to business brokerage. Are you seeing this type of stuff? Let's just have an opening salvo about what's happening with the bad actors in the business brokerage industry.
Yeah, I'm starting to see more and more things like buy a business with no money down. Hey, take my class for $10,000 or $15,000. I'll teach you how to buy a business with no money down. And I'm going to tell you, Neal, at first I was very upset. I'm like, wow, these people are really misleading these people what reality is. And I'm not saying that if all the moons in the universe align that you may not be able to buy a business with no money down. But reality is, if you're seriously looking to acquire a business, you're going to have to put some money down. We both know that.
Absolutely.
And at first I was very taken back and upset, and I'm still upset that people are, paying $10,000 or $15,000 or more out of their pocket to take these classes, which I don't think is necessary at all. And I think they're leading them down the wrong direction. On the flip side of that, I'm looking at that and going, there's a huge push for this right now. There's a lot, tons and tons and tons of buyers out there that have never thought about owning a business, but now they're getting all this information given to them. Buy a business, no money down. Just like in the 80s when it was, no money down to buy real estate. At least it got people interested in investing in real estate as an investment. So that's how I'm kind of looking at it right now. But
always seeing the positive.
What are your thoughts on that, Neal?
I think there's more of it now. The interest rates being high on real estate, I think, are making real estate less easy. I mean, I'm a real estate investor. I'm not finding the deals that I used to. I think it used to be really easy to become a real estate investor and find cash flowing properties. I think there's less of that now. So you're seeing some of that demand. If someone wants to be an entrepreneur, the first thing they do, they tend to go to real estate. And then if that's hard, maybe there's some spillover into business brokerage. And then I think it's blended with this influencer thing, right? I'm a wannabe influencer. Like, my thing is I sell businesses, but I also want to be an educator. I'm a YouTube educator, but that'd be considered like this influencer class. But I think some of the influencer stuff is spilling into this. I call it the sexy business brokerage stuff. It sounds really cool. Like, I'm going to sling businesses. I'm going to flip businesses. It sounds really cool. And people want to say that they do that, and they can't do it as well and as easily in real estate. I think that's where a lot of it's coming from. It's interesting that they're getting younger and younger. I'm seeing younger and younger buyers. They're building out everything on Canva and these newer tools that are just making it easier. They're using a lot of the new AI tools. Everything's moving so much faster too. So I think a lot of it is the marketing tools that have become easier and more accessible are combining with the influencer thing and combining with other pressures that are funneling them into this business brokerage space that we've been in for some time.
And I guess there's a couple things that still really bother me about this. Like I said, the money that some of these people are paying to take these classes. Another thing is that I think they're misguiding them on a lot on what reality is and what reality is not. Zero down. Hey, you can be an absentee owner, which in some businesses you can, but as you know, you're buying a business, you're putting your life savings down. It should be taking many years before you get the position that you're an absentee owner. And even when you are an absentee owner, you've got to oversee that business. But there's a lot of different things that I think that they're portraying that are not going to be true in reality. And one of the biggest things that I think that they do too is that a lot of them seem to be very anti-business intermediary. They're anti-business broker because they are coming from the buying perspective And the
Yeah.
last thing they want you to do is to take the business to the open market where
Yeah.
you can get the most you can possibly get for your business with the best terms possible. Of course, they would rather you contact them directly and only work with them, because that way they're going to get a better price for them. They're going to get better terms for them. You're
Mhm.
selling your business. You want to get it into the marketplace in a confidential way where nobody knows that your business is for sale, and you get a good quality broker that knows what they're doing, and they're
Yeah.
going to maximize your sales price, and they're going to maximize what your terms are going to look like. So they're fearful of. And I think that's another thing that really bothers me out there with some of these influencers. They're painting the business broker as just this bad, horrible, terrible person, and they're not. And even to the buyers that are buying a business, we are not your enemy. We're there to help you and assist you in acquiring the business. And we're going to help organize and get all the information that you're going to want and see put together, and educate and explain things to the seller as well to make the transaction go a lot smoother.
This is a great topic. And I like to tell buyers, like, by the time we bring it to the market, chances are we've already kicked the business owner in the shins and brought them down to reality, because we probably wouldn't have taken the listing if we didn't think it was priced appropriately. This is something that you teach a lot on your channels. And so I think that's a very valid point, that we are helping buyers and serving our clients, our seller clients, by helping get the price right. And just to tell a quick story about this idea of finding off-market businesses for sale, I tried to do one of these videos where you watch someone else's video, and somebody said, hey, watch this video. This guy did a video about why not to use a business broker. And don't watch it, just record your reaction to watching it. This video is on my YouTube channel. So I watched one of these folks that sells courses and has classes, and I started the video. I said, never watched this before. Let's see what he has to say. And his audience was for business buyers that were looking for off-market deals. And I have to say, I agree with most everything that he said, because the things that he was saying is, like, if the business isn't ready to be sold, if it can't survive on the open market because it has some major issues, then maybe they'll sell directly to you instead of, maybe a broker wouldn't even represent it. Business brokers tend to want to sell cash flowing businesses. It reminded me of, I did sell a business of a woman, and she'd been in this business 53 years, started when she was 13, and she was retiring from this business. And her granddaddy had started the business, and then her mommy gave it to her, and then her mom had passed away. And selling this business, she said, hey, I need to sell my mom's house. It's in disrepair. And it was not far from, I knew the neighborhood really well. It wasn't far from where I live. It was in a nice neighborhood, but they had stopped taking care of the house, and the house needed major repairs. Like, no real estate agent could even list it on the open market because it had to be fixed. It was more of a flip, the house was. So I started to see this parallel with business buyers that want to fix broken businesses. Maybe that's where you go shopping for these type of businesses. Business brokers typically don't want to fix businesses. We want to represent businesses that are cash flowing, that are healthy. And those owners that have invested that, they want to get a market rate for those businesses. And that's where I think that we really can perform a very, very valuable service. So kind of a long story, but I started to see where these off-market deals come into play, both with my personal story with this house that was in no repair, and then I can understand why a business buyer would want to buy a business that's, it's suffering, and the owner's kind of given up on it. But those aren't the best businesses for brokers to sell.
Because the vast majority of buyers are not looking for those kind of businesses. But if there is a buyer that's looking for that kind of business, that's fantastic.
And those buyers may be able to help out an owner if they just want to get out of it. They're not worried about a price. They're just trying to get out from underneath a bad situation. Maybe there's a match there. The only other bad actor I think about on this topic of, I'll call it predatory, challenging situations that people can find themselves in. We talked about the business buyer and their search. I've been doing this for 8+ years now. You've been doing a lot longer. There are some groups, and I won't use names, but they're out there selling $40,000 valuations to business owners. They're doing phenomenal presentations, and they're telling owners kind of what they want to hear for sales price. And it's I talked to an owner recently who talked to one of these guys 6 years ago, and he's still hearing from them. And I've talked to people that are in multi-year listing contracts with these type of groups. Have you heard about these type of groups that are offering these high valuations?
My feeling is if you're being charged very high upfront fees, I think you should look elsewhere at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And even moving that down, Neal, I've recently had conversations with different people that have paid a couple $1,000s to get valuations done on their business, that they're doing it. At the end of the day, the person who's doing the valuation is doing a rule of thumb and not even going off of sold comparables. So I think that if you're a business owner, they should be going out and making sure that if they're getting an appraisal done on the business, making sure that it's an actual appraisal with somebody that does appraisals, that's got the credentials for that, or going with an experienced business broker that's going to use sold comparables, that's going to come very close to what that paid valuation is going to be.
That's a great point. And there's a lot of different intermediaries at different stages of their careers. And we see it all here. Here in North Carolina, there's a healthy brokerage community, and we see people doing it great. And we see people where it's, there might be some room for improvement there. But I do sometimes worry about owners hiring brokers and they don't have the best representation there, or they get sold something that they could have looked up on the internet.
Going back to what you were saying, Neal, $40,000 up front, what are they doing? They're giving you an appraisal on the business. More times than not, that appraisal is overinflated. They're using future earnings on it, and that's not how banks are going to typically look at it. That's not how buyers are going to typically look at it. So they are inflating that price. It includes the SIM fees up front, create the SIM and create all this stuff. But there's no motivation at the end of the day to actually sell that business. They've already collected a huge sum up front. And there are business intermediaries that are really good, and they do charge. I don't charge any upfront fees at all. I only get paid when I actually sell the business. But I know some very good, seasoned, and knowledgeable brokers that charge nominal fees up front. And I think it's okay. It's just when they start to get to be very high fees, you need to start questioning what their motivation is. Are they there just to sell you an upfront package, or at the end of the day, they are there to actually sell your business?
If you're following along at home and maybe you're a business owner, some of the red flags, a significant fee up front is going to reduce motivation to sell it on the back end. And in addition to that, if they're telling you what you want to hear as far as purchase price, 9 out of 10 people that get a selling price are not excited about it. If you think, wow, that's way more than I ever thought I could sell my business for, you're in the minority. That doesn't happen a lot. The research suggests what the most probable sale price is. And the research suggests that most owners think their business is worth more than it is. So that's a hard thing to check to know if you're being told what you want to hear. But the third potential red flag is the people I've talked to who've gone through these events say there's a lot of pomp and circumstance, and that these groups put on a great show, and that it's quite a great presentation, and that people are being dismissed because they didn't qualify for the opportunity, and they leave with stars in their eyes. Like, I can't believe I was chosen to pay $40,000 to get this valuation. Now, I'm serious, Jim. I've had people share with me how powerful. I want to understand how great this presentation is, because they apparently they're really good presenters, these types of groups that do these types of presentations. So we can all get caught up in these types of things. But I do worry, because I've heard this story many, many times. That's a public service warning, I guess. It comes back to, in preparation for this call with you, Jim, I went through your website. I looked at all of the credentials that you have. There's too many to list right here. I read all of the reviews. You have so many reviews, and you've been at it for a long, long time. That's verifiable on your LinkedIn page. And you've got a whole team of people who I can go on your website and see that are supporting your deal. So you're not a one-man band. You didn't just start this yesterday. You've got processes and systems. So that's the type of vetting that I hope business owners are going to do if they're going to hire someone to represent what's probably the largest transaction of their life in most cases. So I turned that into a commercial for you because you deserve it. But,
thank you, Neal. Appreciate that, buddy.
You got it. In the remaining time that we have, I want to go back to how things have changed. You've been at this for a really long time, and I really value your perspective on things. Can you share what it was like back when sliced bread was invented? No, I'm joking. But in the early days, when you started being a business broker, I bet you were better than you give yourself credit for. But how has business brokerage changed in the decades that you've been doing it?
Wow, in so many different ways. One of the funniest things, and this would apply to smaller type businesses, which I'm not really selling anymore, but you take that local restaurant. Back in the day, maybe 50% of the sales came from debit card and credit card, and 50% came from cash. We were dealing a lot back then when I first got in the industry, and I hate to say this, but we were dealing a lot back then with owner-approved situations where the owner wasn't necessarily reporting everything on the tax returns. And the buyers, on the flip side of that, the buyers were very street smart. They were very savvy. They knew that if they knew that industry, they, like for a restaurant, they knew, hey, I know what the average ticket is. If I sat across the street on these certain days at these certain times, I know what it is. And then you fast forward to today, and now you're looking at 80 to 90% of the monies is coming in from debit card, credit card. 10 to 20% is cash. You've got a lot less cash situation going on than you used to, and the buyer mentality has completely changed. You no longer have that street smart buyer that can read between the lines. They're more of and I know we call a financial buyer something else in our industry, but they're more financially oriented. They want to see the tax returns, the bank statements, the merchant service statements, and things like that. And they really don't want to look at that cash. As those business brokers that are out there, you're looking to list that restaurant for sale, and that guy's owned it for 35 years. And he says, well, when I bought the business, You got to explain to them, the world has changed. That's how it was done back then. But nowadays, the buyers are looking for things that are reportable. And I think that's the way it should be done. I haven't done an owner-approved situation in a very, very, very long time. I wouldn't do it at this point. But that's probably one of the biggest changes. As far as business brokers in general, like the technology that we have now is amazing. I mean, if you take 10 years before I got into the industry, Neal, you're talking about a situation where you have no internet, you have no cell phones. So you leave for the day to an appointment, you're out of connection with everybody the whole way through, dealing with things on fax machines. I remember faxing offers back and forth and you could barely read it. And then we would have to rewrite the offer and have everybody get ink on paper. It's just the technology is so much greater. And I look at it, I think, my gosh, these brokers that were in the early 90s and earlier, I give a lot of credit to them for what they were able to do and what they were able to accomplish, being with their hands so cuffed. I think today's broker with technology, and I'm not even getting into AI or anything like that. I'm just talking about basic technology. We should be running circles around the people that came before us. We can get so many more deals done, and we can be so much more efficient than we've ever been before. I think COVID changed a lot too. It changed my practice considerably. I can't tell you how many businesses I've sold where I've never met the buyer and I never met the seller in person. And our closings are done virtually, and you can do things by video conferencing now, and it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Those are great points of technology. It seems like things should have sped up as far as getting deals done, but somehow it still takes forever to close a deal. I know that's something that you're focused on improving. I blame that on landlords and attorneys as much as I love our deal partners, but so the stakeholders still kind of move slowly. But it seems like we should be able to get deals done faster, but it still does take a long time to close these deals.
People are still involved. You know what I mean? Like you got the buyer, you got the seller, and there's still personalities. You got lenders, you got different people involved, the landlords. the personalities, and people still are busy. So it takes them 2 or 3 days to get information over once the deal's done. And if the buyer does that 4 or 5 times and the seller does that 4 or 5 times and the landlord does that a couple times, you get behind the 8 ball.
And that is something that doesn't change, is the people. This will always be a people business. And one of the things I was reading on your website is about how you've had hundreds of business owners, or you've blended that line between client and friend. And that's something that I would imagine, if you think back to those early deals that you've closed and the ones that you closed last month, that joy of helping the business owner achieve what they set out to do. The first thing I always ask people is, what does success look like to you? If they booked a call with a business broker, there's something going on in their life. They're trying to solve a problem. So I love that feeling where, a quick story for me, exactly a year ago, we sold a business and the guy was 100% miserable. And I told him, what do you want to be doing? And he said, I want to be a swim coach in Chicago. And a year ago now, and that's exactly what he's doing. He was running a pizza shop in North Carolina, and now he's a swim coach in Chicago, which was his dream. To me, that's the most rewarding thing. I don't think that'll ever change, is being able to solve business owners' problems. I mean, you can't put a price on that. We could have put a price on his business, but couldn't put a price on what that meant to him.
We're literally changing people's lives, the buyers and the sellers. We're literally involved in changing their lives. And it's amazing. And I think us as business brokers, for those new brokers that are listening to this, that's one thing that we can never forget, because we do it day in and day out, year after year. You tend to become numb to that type of stuff, just like a nurse at a hospital becomes numb to seeing the blood and everything around them. And same thing with us. We tend to get numb to that. And you just always got to remember, my gosh, this is this seller's first time selling a business, and this is going to be the biggest check they're going to ever receive. And the buyer's buying this business, and it's going to be a life-changing event for them. And we just always got to remind ourselves of that constantly, and keep that in the forefront of our mind and not become numb to it.
Well, I think that's a great point to go out on, Jim. Is there anything else you want to share with the audiences that are watching today, like how they can find you, any type of events that you have coming up? This is a great opportunity to get your plugs out and let the people know how to find the great Jim Parker.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. If you want to visit my website is jimparkerbusinessbroker.com. And, if you want to watch some of my videos, you go to YouTube, you can just search Jim Parker Business Broker or Jim Parker Let's Chat. We have a series of videos out there. And Neal, I just want to thank you, because you and I talk a lot. We see each other at conferences a lot. We talk by phone once in a while. We belong to some groups together. And I've learned a lot from you, and I really appreciate everything that I've learned from you. And I appreciate you being a good friend of mine.
Thank you, Jim. It means the world coming from you. We'll put some links to Jim's content here in the comments. For Neal Isaacs, the Raleigh business broker, and Jim Parker, until next time, thanks for watching.